Good morning and welcome to Wednesday's Word, which comes to you from Carlton Community Church here in Nottingham. Well, today's word is worship. Worship is different from praise in this sense. Praise appreciates what God has done, whilst worship is our appreciation, our adoration of who God is. William Temple, who was Archbishop of Canterbury, defined worship with the following words. He said it is the quickening of the conscience by the holiness of God. Worship is feeding the mind with the truth of God. It is the purging of the imagination by the beauty of God, the opening of the heart to the love of God, and the devoting of the will to the purposes of God. In his view, that is what worship is. I want to leave with us today 4 simple biblical truths regarding the worship of the one true and living God. Number 1, true worship is always consistent with the truth. God seeks us, as Jesus said in John chapter 4, to worship him in spirit and in truth. And truth always leads to trust. Remember Job in the most difficult and darkest period of his life, when everything appeared to go wrong and he couldn't make sense of what was happening. He never said why. He never questioned his God, but he simply bowed down and worshipped. And he said this about God: "Naked I came into the world, and naked I shall leave it. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away." He knew that God was in charge of his life, which caused him to trust him when Job couldn't make out what was happening. Secondly, true worship is always a confession which is centered upon the God of the Word. That is the God who was found in his Word, the Holy Bible. I remember in Acts chapter 4, I've been reading that recently, and when the apostles are released from prison because they've been proclaiming Jesus, the resurrected one, they went back to their own people and they worshipped God. They knew, as they proclaimed in their confession, that he was the sovereign Lord, the God who was over all, and that he had made the heavens and the earth. Number 3, true worship is always contested. Remember the life of the Saviour, and it found in Matthew chapter 4 when he's in the wilderness. Satan did his utmost to both detract and detour Jesus from the worship of God. And he was very subtle. He sought to give him wealth rather than he worshipped God. And thankfully, Jesus chose the worship of God over wealth. And I think in all our lives, we are faced with those challenges very often where we have to make a decision. Am I going to be a true worshipper of God, or am I going to follow the wealth of this world? And finally, true worship always calls for consecration, the devotion of ourselves, the submitting of ourselves, the surrendering of ourselves to God. Everything we have, everything we are, we hand over to this majestic God who made the heavens and the earth and who redeemed us through the cross of Christ and his atoning death. Paul, writing to the Romans in chapter 12, says these words: "Present your bodies to God as living sacrifices, as this is your spiritual worship." Choose today, choose this week, whatever comes through your door, whatever happens, choose to be like Job. Don't say why, but just bow down and acknowledge who this God is. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully I shall see you next week.